First, just to acknowledge the fact that we have counselors or directors, Directors Roden and Smith online, and Director Stamer will be late because he's doing good deeds on the highway that should be dealt with by the province. Yeah, I'm in that kind of mood today, guys. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nation communities across our vast regional district. And today we are located on the Secwepemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with our neighbors in Tecumlips and respect the territory and land on which we gather today for this meeting. Any additions or deletions from the agenda? Motion to approve. Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Middleton. All those in favor? Yes, good, carried. Motion to approve the minutes. Any problems with the minutes? Moved by Middleton, seconded by Morris. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. 5.1, Board Correspondence Policy Amendments. Who's handling that? Greg? Mr. Lois?
Thank you, Chair. So frantically try to balance a microphone and a laptop. The first item before you today is proposed amendments to the board correspondence policy. The redlined version of that was attached to your agendas, so you should all have had a chance to see the 3 paragraphs or sections that we are proposing to add to the policy. They are essentially all being proposed in order to ensure that we handle correspondence as what we're asking for is essentially the ability to handle correspondence properly when things that are problematic come in. So for example, in item 7, if I start with that one as the first one, correspondence addressed to the TNRD with a request for board action will be reviewed by the chair and corporate officer prior to inclusion on the next board or committee agenda to determine whether the request relates to a regional district function. The reason for that is that it's typical for correspondence that comes in, it will often ask for, say, action be taken, and sometimes it's just simply completely outside of our jurisdiction. So for example, if anybody is asking for us to take action on highways, we don't control any roads within the regional district. We can lobby on their behalf and we can engage with different entities, but we can't actually take any action. And so we're asking for that paragraph to go in so that the chair and the corporate staff can look at the appropriateness of the question being asked so that we have formal authority to potentially not act or take the action that they're asking for if that's inappropriate. Section 15 is one that I feel kind of exists at the moment implicitly, but we're looking to very much make it explicit, which is notwithstanding any other section in this policy, the TNRD will not publish on a meeting agenda or otherwise material deemed by the chair, corporate officer, or CAO to be libelous. Materials which have been deemed libelous will be returned to the sender with an invitation to remove the libelous comments and resubmit the materials. The reason we're including that is there have been occasions, both at the TNRD and elsewhere, where, for example, people will write in with something which is within your function. So, for example, on making a submission on a planning matter, or asking you to take actions within the authority that you do have. But then in addition to that legitimate comment, they have, say, a lengthy detail about the argument that they're having with their neighbors and then calling them all kinds of names and accusing them of taking various actions. We're then put in the awkward situation where they have made a legitimate submission which does indeed need to go to you. And for example, on a land use issue, we might be looking at it and thinking, this is an opinion they've expressed on a land use issue. If we don't put it before the board, then somebody could in future challenge the integrity of the decision because you were denied access to information. And yet, because of the then additional section, we'd be looking at it going, but if we publish this, then our agenda now includes libel and we can be sued, and that's a major problem. So in that kind of situation where we feel there is a no-win situation, we've been on a somewhat ad hoc basis dealing with applicants, or say, I have recently proposed to someone that a resubmission be made in order to make it suitable for agenda publishing. And this is asking for explicit authority to do that within the correspondence policy. And then section 21, correspondence received after the deadline outlined in a published notice will be compiled and sent to the originating department, where it will be added to their corresponding file and held as a record. This, again, one of the things that springs to mind is decisions on land use issues. We publish notice that if you wish to make written submissions, it needs to come in by date X. A submission comes in on date X+1. Now, we can't handle that in the same manner, because if we do, then the notice was incorrect. And again, people could challenge the integrity of the decision because we had not followed the rules that we laid out. So this is just very clearly stating what will happen to it in that manner, that it will go to the department instead of to the board. So we will keep the correspondence on record, but will not actually action it. So those are the three proposals that we are looking to make, three proposed changes we are looking at making to this and the justification. So I would love your feedback, comments, questions, etc., if you have any.
Questions, comments? Nothing? We love it. Okay. Somebody want to move the recommendation? Director Middleton. Director Thorpe? Oh, okay. Then I'll have Director Laird seconding it. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion. Lots of discussion on IT. Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Aye.
Oh, you're there. I totally forgot. I'm sorry, Barb. Could I hear a yes from both of you?
Aye, in favor.
Yep, in favor.
Thank you. That's a silly rule. Next item, policy amendment to review. Is that you too, Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Chair. And just because this wasn't enough of the Greg show, IT is technically within my department as well. So yes, we have, well, we're looking at getting people in to help with the issues that are arising. So the presentation, which is just come up on screen, and I realized I have got a clicker for this. I think that's the first time I've actually used that in this room. And I want to thank Marnie for putting this together. She did a great job, although she has now gone to track down IT. But, so yeah, we'll be going through an overview of this committee, a review of the policies that have had action taken, and then the upcoming ones. And then we will be asking you for your thoughts on how things work. So just the history of this committee, it's been around for about 20 years, but it did have a short hiatus in there, and it was reinstated in 2021. As you're all aware, the purpose is to discuss and provide recommendations on policy issues, including the development of new policies and reviews of existing ones. And there's been a lot of work done in the last couple of years, and there is a 6-page sheet that we'll be looking at as part of this. Now the clicker has stopped working. IT show up and things start breaking. So this is just an overview of some of the upcoming policies that we'll be looking at. And just to let you know, the correspondence policy that you've literally just been looking at is on neither the already done nor the upcoming, because it's at the same meeting. So policy and governments, we'll be looking at amending the appeal policy to include public feedback and complaints process to support effective, fair, transparent, and consistent processes. Information and privacy management, looking at amending information privacy management accountable policies to reflect the integration of information privacy, information system security, information management and risk management functions as proactive, preventative TNRD-wide activity. This touches on, but also goes further than confidentiality and privacy, privacy breach, privacy management, video surveillance, and website privacy. And I'm just also going to give a shout out for another fantastic member of my department. Kara Wright does incredible work on information and privacy management. She really is a subject matter expert. So she will be having a lot of input onto all the privacy stuff that you guys wind up doing. Risk management issues will be developing information privacy security risk management policy to support the implementation of integrated and actionable enterprise risk management program to prevent the loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability from occurring and transparently managing inherent risks. We swallowed a buzzword from dictionary when we were putting this together. Information management, developing information management accountability policy to establish high-level requirements to guide digital management of information systems, and communications technologies. And this will also be looking at information management standards, schedules, and guidelines, including amending email records management policy. This is a 10-year-old policy, and I'm just thinking email records are one of the ones that we often do get questions about, of understanding what are records, what retention schedules need to be applied, how they're managed in terms of, say, FOIPA requests, etc. So it is, particularly with that being 10 years old, and there's some of the new systems that we're operating, like cloud-based systems, it's increasingly important that we have good policies on that front. And Scott has just drawn my attention that Barbara apparently has a virtual hand up.
I do, and I just a question.
Apologize, Barb. I was dealing with an issue at City Hall that took my attention away. Go ahead.
It was only up for about 10 seconds. Presumably, the policy itself will be in English.
To my chagrin, yes, we will have to do that.
Okay, there was that one paragraph contained a lot of jargon.
Absolutely, and I think
quite impressive, actually, but I'm hoping that the actual policy will be in English.
I can assure that when we're actually drafting the policies themselves, readability is one of the things that we are definitely aware of. I mean, as a local government in particular, I think it's really important that just members of the public, residents, your electors, they need to be able to go through these documents, understand them, and see what rules you're applying that are bound to at this organization. So absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And I was being slightly tongue-in-cheek, but thank you, Corporate Officer Lois. You do put your finger on something that we do hear complaints about from the public, which is the tendency of local governments to speak in jargon, speak in acronyms, particularly. And I think you hit it on the head when you say that our policies do need to reflect, being in plain English so that members of the public can easily understand them, because, it's one thing for us to understand them and the people who write them, but ultimately we are answerable to the residents, and we want them to be able to understand what it is that we're doing as well.
Director Smith, I did sort of see something up there that said that you had your hand up, but it's gone now. Are you still wanting to speak?
Yes. I
And
can
just-
see my hand from my end.
Okay, just in terms of IT, oh, I can finally see you guys again. You were gone. Thank you.
I'm not sure whether this is the time or the committee, but I wondered about, we had a little bit of chatter through the budget process about reserve funds and minimums and maximums and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure if that's something that would come through this committee, or that we would defer that through the finance committee, but I just wanted to just ask that question if staff has an idea.
Mr. Lois.
Director Smith, if you just waited 30 seconds. I'll skip forward now onto the next slide, where upcoming
Very good,
policies. Upcoming policies we have in the finance department The Finance Committee and the board, the Finance Committee recommended to the board, which then gave instruction to develop a surplus and reserve policy. So that will be coming through this committee, absolutely, yes. So you'll have a chance to look at it and weigh in on how you feel, what kind of impact it would have, and if we're heading in the right direction. And that'll be looking at ensuring stability of services, employment, operations at the TNRD, and making sure we have the right funds to do repair, improvement, etc. And the other one on the finance end is developing a new investment policy to ensure appropriate investment and handling of public funds. Obviously, that's extremely important, making sure that we manage the money that we have on behalf of the public responsibly and with accountability.
Just a question on that. What does responsibility and accountability mean in terms of investment? Because it means different things to different people.
That it really does, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Ms. Fox when she's not here, but I can give you an example from my prior life back very early in my career in local government. 7,000 kilometers away, a lot of UK local authorities had investments in Icelandic banks in the late 2000s because they were very attractive interest rates, and that looked responsible to have money in there, getting a good return, and using that money to then be able to spend on future projects. And then 2007, 2008 happened, those banks collapsed and local authorities lost millions of dollars, and they spent several years in litigation trying to get some of it back. So we are like 15 years on from that kind of financial crisis experience. We are very aware of the need to act responsibly and make sure that the public money is kept safe. But at the same time, we do have an obligation. There's a couple of authorities in British Columbia in the last couple of years where councils have complained that they felt staff were being too cautious, too conservative, and that as a result, their residents were missing out on income that they could have reigned by going at a very slightly higher risk level to get higher returns. So that's the kind of tension that we're always looking to balance to make sure that we use the money responsibly without placing it at risk.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks. And thanks. And Ashley, can we zoom in at all? Yes, we can. So we've got a now 6-page spreadsheet up here, which is just looking at some of the policies that have been dealt with in the last few years. So as you can see, we've got parking passes and service recognition that was done back in 21. The code of conduct's been looked at a couple of times, and board expenses, privacy and confidentiality policies, volunteer recognition. You fairly recently looked at the flag protocol that's been amended, and the delegations and invited presentations. That was just a month or so back. Regional grants and sponsorship, electoral area grants and aid, Canada Community Building Fund, disposal of assets, admin fees, the whistleblowing policy. Keep going. Building violation and enforcement procedure, the Section 57 guiding document. You have quite a lot of Section 57s here at the TNRD. Dangerous dog control issues, street lighting, establishment in specified areas. I know that's the item which is coming up in one area at the moment. Community cleanup events, clean energy projects processing and referrals, consultation and development application processing, aggregate and mining referrals, public hearings, written submissions, search and rescue, capital training and operational funds, alternate directors policy. That's a new one that we're looking at. So that's a policy outlining the duties and responsibilities of alternate directors. And another new one coming in that we're looking at bringing you in the future in, privacy breach investigation. Flow through grants, procurement policy. Those are both new ones. And as I keep scrolling, that's the page. Remuneration, airline tickets, cancellation of attendance policies, taking home of corporate vehicles, community assistance fund, court summons, IT management. background checks, short-term vacation rentals, local assistance to the fire commission, ESS funding and operation funds, and I think that is the last page. So that's an overview of your activity for this committee since 2021. So as you can see, there has been quite a lot that's been managed. And then I think the last slide is to ask you, as a committee, are there policies that you feel should be researched or implemented that either we haven't touched on recently or are not proposing at this point to bring forward that you think are important that we should be looking at?
CEO Hildebrand.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Just a quick comment before the feedback is that I think people understand why we've gone through this extensive work around policies and procedures and governance. Since the forensic audit, we've done a lot of great work, and that's why sometimes we come to these meetings and these agendas and there's sometimes not a lot of content to change because we've been so focused on that in the last 3 or 4 years. So I really want your feedback on this, but if there's things that you would like us to go and research and take a look at best practices, we'd love to hear it. So.
Any discussion, any suggestions, anyone? No hands up there. Director Thorpe.
Thanks. I'm wondering with wildfires and everything that's happening, and I think Scott and I talked a little bit via email about this, is there something that we can look at with terms of fire smart? I'm not suggesting that we become the fire smart police, but is there maybe something in our what's the word I want? Unsightly premises or anything like that where we could maybe deal with that just on a proactive basis. I'm not saying that we be heavy-handed, but that we maybe have something that we can encourage people with. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through Chair Bass. It's something that Alex and I talked about after our email back and forth about the struggle is it's private property. So if people have long grass, what's too high, what's too low? If there's piles of wood, if there's other things around, it's almost an invasion of privacy to some people because they feel like I guess their property is well maintained. Others may not think it is. So it's a really difficult situation to deal with. So we'd be open to looking at that further, but Alex couldn't think of any other situation or other best practice in another regional district where we went that deep. Because as we know, a lot of our residents want to be left alone. For the most part, free from regulations and things like that, but it's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, I would thanks. I would agree with you. I don't think any of us want to go that deep, but I think that we need to maybe look at the possibility of having some kind of recourse because we're looking at more than one person in a neighborhood. We're looking at 20 or 30 homes. And at what point is somebody's privacy the priority over somebody's safety? So somewhere along the line, I think we need to see if we can't find some common ground.
Yeah, it's certainly. Any comments, Greg?
Absolutely. I mean, I think municipalities, for example, which tend to be rather more densely built up, they will sometimes have provisions in their unsightly provisions and say they're either unsightly bylaw, good neighbor bylaw, whatever it is. And where, say, if there's dead, dying vegetation or piled materials that increase the fire risk, then that might be, that's something they might take more action on. But even in municipalities, that can often be controversial. And I think we know that a lot of the time in regional districts, residents feel that if they live in electoral areas, it's because they don't want to have the regulations that come from living in an incorporated municipality. So it's definitely a fine line that, and working with the various departments we can potentially look at, but again, it's a case of balancing various tensions of, on the one hand, community safety, on the other hand, individuals' property rights.
Go ahead.
If I could just add to that as well, I think we need to take a really strategic approach on it because if we do decide to do that, we've got one bylaw officer for 45,000 square kilometers that would never be able to keep up on managing long grass, for example, or piles of wood, which it would be, I think we'd be in a position then when I think residents would be upset with our service at that point. So we got to think about that for sure. And then maybe there's another angle to this and really kind of, I know with Fire Smart, the next step, once we continue to move through these assessments, I think there's going to be incentives for residents to actually get funding and grants to do some of that work, which then might change perspective and allow people to be maybe more proactive in dealing with some of these properties and encouraging people to clean up to protect themselves and their neighbors.
Chair Roden.
Thank you. CEO Hildebrand, I was just going to raise that about Fire Smart. I think that is possibly the tool to use in educating people about the wood piles near the house, the piles of debris, the long grass, etc. And I know how hard it is to manage that in a municipality. We're actually dealing with that situation in Ashcroft right now, where we have a bylaw officer who works in 14 square kilometers. And that is taking up a massive amount of his time, Director of Public Works time, CAO's time, etc., just to deal with one property. And I dread to think what it would be like if we started trying to do this throughout the TNRD. So I think really going hard with Fire Smart. I think we're doing an excellent job with that so far with the like offering to Fire Smart people's properties. I think that's the way to at first approach the education portion of this, because I'm a great believer in let's try the education route first before we start trying to go to policy or bylaw.
Director Laird.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was wondering if we had any policies around working with First Nations and inclusion. Do we have a policy around that, or do we have any direction on from staff or from the board of where that policy might be at? Is that something that we need? Just to get clarity.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through Chair Bass. I don't believe we have a policy in place, but I do know we have that. I mean, that's our intention with the strategic plan, is to build those relationships, work on memorandums of understanding and build relationships with our First Nations partners. So that's all part of it. We've got a few coming up in the very near future with signing ceremonies. So I know we're making progress, but we certainly have a long ways to go. And Corbin, I don't know if there's anything else you could add, or did that cover it?
No, thanks, CEO Hildebrand. I think I just would want clarification from Director Laird if, when you're talking about, I know some regional districts have policies around involvement of non-treated First Nations on their boards of directors. If that's more something that you were meaning, or if it's just around the general engagement and consultation aspects of First Nations relations.
I think it'll be around just the general engagement. One thing that we have talked about as a board, and I think there's a motion that we look at cultural protection. I'm not sure. Director Thorpe brought it up, and I think that's one of the key things that we really can focus on, because it would involve every area of our regional district with the local reservations. If you would look at cultural events, and I don't know whether you'd put that in a policy or how that would go forward.
I think I can answer that through Chair Bass. I think that's part of that discussion and that conversations that we're having as we build relationships. There's a lot of staff to staff meetings that are happening where these conversations are coming up, and then we can bring that forward to, more official kind of memorandums of understanding from a political level as well, to make sure we're all aligned. If I may, just to answer Chair Roden, Director Roden's comment about Fire Smart, I just also wanted to remind the group that one of the recommendations from the provincial task force was really putting a lot more focus on Fire Smart and funding it more heavily, and putting a lot more emphasis and education behind it. So that's something that the Premier has blessed and said he would fund. So let's hope. I know Chair Bass is smiling, but I know that's something he said, and that's something we'll continue to push.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? No? Director Morris.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Both of these two topics are certainly not new, and I'll just very briefly, one relates back to the unsightly properties again, of course, and just the policy around the reporting and how that happens. And I've already mentioned to a few people, but what I'm wondering around is developing that that anonymity that I think that the reporters sort of need to have. So I want to just make sure we stay on that track of trying to sort how we can enable neighbors or others in a neighborhood to in fact file that complaint and maintain their anonymity because it minimizes. And great, we've had the conversation, but that might be me. Hang on just a moment. Sorry about that. I just turned it off. So in any case, I've already had numerous conversations one-on-one with some folks. I just want to add that into the notes that are accompanying this this particular meeting. The other one that has come up, and it seems to me that it's also a policy issue as well as very functional as well. And that is around all of our various volunteer groups and access to liability coverage themselves as organizations. And that could fall into the fire protection that we've been having loads of conversations about, but other areas as well. So this could be small communities. And my guess is you've gone down this road multiple times, but I certainly am hearing about it quite a bit right now within Area P and the volunteer groups. So if we can take another look from a policy perspective, how could we help to enable that and also keep ourselves safe, as it were, from a legal perspective as an organization? That's all I
ahead.
actually have to add today, I think.
Okay, thank you for that. I just have a quick response on that. I know the presentation by the Knutsford Group that to the board last meeting was very helpful, and I remember them talking specifically about them trying to source insurance and working through that process. So I think there's probably some best practices there. Societies certainly do need insurance in place, and I think that's the responsibility of the society. But when it comes to things like fire training and fire non-structural fire, that's something that we're looking at now, actually, and we're going to bring it up at the EA meeting tomorrow as a conversation, because we have some thoughts and ideas around that. So Mr. Vieira and I are going to have that discussion with the EA group because we feel like there's a way to be protected as an organization, at the same time provide funding for training and non-structural kind of fire equipment so that they can engage more so. And the fact that BC Wildfire and the recommendations from the task force are about working together, we need to get something in place to help these societies flourish and move forward. So that certainly we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Anyone else? No hands up there. Okay, thank you. Last item is new business. Anyone have any new business? Short meeting. Motion to adjourn. Move my treasure. Thank you.
That was quick. Thank you.
All right, see you all tomorrow.
See you later.